Hello, everyone, and welcome to Middle Fantasy, the show where I talk about science fiction and fantasy. I am your host, Zach, and I have to say I look a little professorial, and the reason that is because we're doing another episode of Fantasy 101. Yes, today we're going to be talking about the difference between a soft magic system and a hard magic system. So why don't we learn about it? So much like high and low fantasy, when it comes to a soft and hard magic system, it's kind of quintessentially the exact same thing, just it's different in the sense of like when it comes to magic. Now, when we look at magic, magic is awesome. Magic can solve so many problems. It's one of the reasons what fantasy does really well is it incorporates magic. It can do so many things, and you can incorporate magic into storytelling that you couldn't do for science fiction or a crime thriller, but you can integrate them really well with magic because it's a very universal thing. Now, when it comes to a hard and soft magic, there's the same type of understanding. Hard magic is magic that has its own rules and works within a sense of realism and usually is based in some sort of science. I always think of it as magic that needs charts at the back of the book, whereas soft magic is magic that can pretty much do anything. It doesn't really need an explanation because, well, it's magic. Now, these terms of magic systems actually come from Mr. Magic System himself, Brandon Magic System Sanderson, which I think that's his legal middle name because he thought danger was too obvious. Must be really weird for like legal documents. But when it comes to Brandon Sanderson, he actually created something called the Sanderson's Law of Magic. When it comes to the term hard and soft magic, they were popularized by him, but that's pretty much because it's the fantasy version of hard science versus soft science in a lot of literary works and science fiction, whereas they're pretty much the exact same thing. Hard science is pretty much like everything is basically built within science. It has to be realistic, like Earth's orbit, gravity, everything has to be factored in, whereas soft science is more like, the rocket goes up and people can breathe, whereas hard science, they're really getting into the nitty-gritty of using their PhDs or getting into pretty much like, I love science. But I really recommend looking at Sanderson's Law of Magic essays. They're really fantastic reads. I'll have a link down below. But if I were to boil down what this is and what his laws are for hard magic systems to make it easier to understand, this is quintessentially his laws. Number 1. An author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. Number 2. Weakness, limits, and costs are more important than powers. And number 3. The author should expand on what is already part of the magic system before something entirely new is added, as this may otherwise entirely change how the magic systems fit into the fictional world. Now, to really get into the nitty-gritty of hard magic, basically it's magic that has rules and has a basis of reality to the extent of that you can't solve all your issues and fix them all with magic, unless there's a consequence or repercussion that comes with using that magic in that way. My primary example of a hard magic system is actually Fullmetal Alchemist. For people who are unfamiliar with the magic system, basically you can create things out of other things, but you need to give something up to create that thing. It's a law of equal exchange. You can create crazy things and have amazing abilities, but you are bound by the law of equal exchange. You can't really break these rules unless it can be explained through the magic system. Personally, for me, I love hard magic systems for this reason, because it takes stakes to a story, because magic can't solve everything, and you are bound to certain rules that people are aware of this, and it lends to interesting situations that the hero or villain has to overcome, and then when they do, it feels so earned as the reader that it can be awesome, because there's something when it comes to it, I always think of like the rule of like horror movies, because when you have those rules like Nightmare on Elm Street, don't go to sleep, Quiet Place, don't make a sound. When it comes to Halloween, or I guess Friday the 13th, don't have premarital sex. But when you start to like fudge those rules a little bit, you're like, what is the point of this? Because you understand very simply what the stakes are. And when it comes to a magic system where basically you have all these rules and you have the issue of like, if I break one of these, what's going to happen? Or you have to explain things. It can be really weird for the audience when all of a sudden they have like godlike abilities, but it doesn't have like a basis within the rule system, because then it's like, what? It kind of starts muddling. Like, you might not notice that, but sometimes your brain's just like, whoa, 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 step back. Now, on the other hand, when it comes to soft magic, you have the exact opposite. When rules don't really apply, magic can do what magic wants. And if someone complains about something when it comes to magic not making sense, you just have to say, well, duh. It's all done by magic, silly. When it comes to a soft magic system, I always think of like Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. He has all these amazing abilities and he could like murder a lot of people. It's like really made for like the screen. That's why when you see Gandalf doing magic on screen, it's so amazing. And it's something that it doesn't have to be explained. Gandalf will never explain it whatsoever, but you just know it's cool. But at the same time, when it comes to this, I've always considered soft magic being like wallpaper. It isn't the main focus of the story, but rather it's supposed to accompany it. I always think of when it comes to this as well, a good example of this is actually ancient myths. Magic just happens to be there and it can do whatever it needs to do that the story needs. The magic is not the focus, but rather the wallpaper. Because you're not limited to rules, the author can create some amazing scenes that make you stop and go, whoa, that was radical! Now, which system is better? Well, once again, that is a matter of opinion because both have their pros and cons. Hard magic systems add rules and stakes, but at the same time, this can lead to problems in the story, where an author might write themselves almost into a corner and find like a technicality to get past a problem, or as a reader, you might get overwhelmed by the rules and the detail to the point of where you're not sure what's going on, and you have to go back and like having to like re-examine the rules, either through a chart in the back of the book, or maybe even reading the chapter where they explain the magic system to be like, is that how it works? And this has happened to me before for some books, so it's one of those where I understand where hard magic has a hard time. But if we look at soft magic, there's not as much conflict when it comes to that, but also you might have the problem of like, you can solve issues with like a wave of your wand, doing like lightning bolts, to the point of where it might be boring or tedious, or it's just so like vague the magic that you just have to take it at face value. And when something crazy and amazing happens, you just have to be like, oh, okay, I guess magic has to work this way. And it almost feels like cheating sometimes because I've read some books where it's like, can they really do that? Okay, well, yeah, that's fine. Let's just keep reading this book, I guess. Much like any rules when it comes to any genre or writing, they can be broken. There are plenty of examples when it comes to a hard and soft magic system blurring the lines between the two. You can have hard magic but have soft magic elements, and you can have soft magic that has hard magic elements. And an example that I can give to this is actually the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. In it is a very clear-cut hard magic system with sympathy. It has all these rules. It has every variables, like if you break this, something bad will happen. If you do this, something worse might happen. But when it comes to sympathy, there's also naming, whereas naming is more a soft magic system that can do anything. As long as you know the name or the true name of something, you can have control over that, and pretty much you have a soft magic system. Another example of this is actually Star Wars. Star Wars is a very clear-cut soft magic system. To the most part, it's actually kind of funny when it comes to it. If we look at the original trilogy, it is very much like the Force is this mystical force that can pretty much do anything that it needs to do with the Jedi or the Sith. Now, when you get to like the prequels with like Phantom Menace and kind of like having almost like a weird pseudo hard magic where they tried to base it more into science, sorta, and kind of have it more like hard magic where it's like, okay, we're going to explain a bunch of the things. And then when they get to the sequel trilogy, they go back to it's this mystical force that has all these things that it can do to serve the purpose of the story. But I digress, because when it comes down to it, you can have both the systems pretty much work hand in hand. You can have elements that are explained. Again, you can look at Sanderson's laws and how not everything has to be clear cut. And it really, when it comes to magic, either system works as long as it's fun for the plot and the reader really enjoys it. But they both have their place. But personally for me, I love hard magic because detailed magic adds so much depth to the world and to the conflicts within. Some of my favorite hard magic systems are Allomancy and Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, Sympathy in the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss, Bending in Avatar The Last Airbender, and the Magic in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb are some of my favorite hard magic systems. When it comes to some of my favorite soft magic systems, I love Percy Jackson by Rick Riordan, Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, and A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin, or even Uprooted, if you've ever read that novel by Naomi Novik, is some of my favorite like soft magic systems. But in the end, it's just a matter of preference. No system is better than the other. They both have their pros and they both have their cons. And that's the difference between a hard magic system and a soft magic system. And I love talking about this type of stuff. It's so much fun to talk about this. And I just want to say thank you all so much for watching this amazing video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked this video, maybe consider liking down below. I'd really appreciate that. And thank you so much, everyone. Like always, may your food and drink ever be tasteful, and may your books be always filled with fantasy and adventure. Bye, everybody. See ya!